doesn't define my entire career, and it doesn't define my life, and it doesn't define who I am. I can make a choice, and it's very draining to give 100% in a relationship, any relationship, that you're not getting that back in emotions. Like, being able to empathize and understand different perspectives, it's a huge thing.
Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome back to the Long-Term Podcast. I'm your host, Advin Villa. Today, we have elementary education student at the University of Calgary, Taryn Frans. We will discuss navigating uncertainties when it comes to career choices and life paths, quality over quantity when it comes to friendships and reading. Taryn is a wonderful person, and today we discuss what it's like feeling like you don't know what to do in life and just grappling with uncertainty, and it's very authentic. Taryn is great, and I can't wait for all of you to hear this honest and thoughtful conversation. Everyone, welcome.
We are live here with Taryn Frans on the Long-Term Podcast. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too.
Yeah, so I know one of the topics that you chose was uncertainty. And as the years go along, right, we press more time onto the things that we're diving into, and things get really serious, and sometimes it becomes too late, and a lot of kids these days don't know what they want to do, and I'm on that boat as well. So when navigating uncertainty, what strategies have you found helpful when facing uncertainty in your school or career decisions?
Yeah. No, I've faced a lot of that uncertainty myself in the last 5 years. I was one of those kids who didn't know what she wanted to do right out of high school, like some others, and figuring that out has been a journey. I think in terms of strategies, one of the biggest things that was helpful to me was seeking advice from the people close to me, people like mentors or colleagues who have that experience and who can shed light on the realities of whatever field it is you're considering, whether that be social work or education. There's a lot of things that you don't see or know until you're in it. But even just hearing about it from other people was something that really helped. And in addition to that, just your friends and family, those are people who are there to support you. And it's a great resource to just turn to those people in your life and who can offer you an outside perspective. It's true of anything. When you're in it, it's so hard to see holistically. But so many people in my life said, Taryn, you would make a great teacher. You should go into education. You would be a great teacher. And, at first, hearing all of that is very daunting. And it's like, oh, I feel like if I choose that, I'm choosing a path that has just been laid out for me and chosen for me. And I think that's why it took me so long to get into education, is because I felt like I wasn't making my own choice if I did that. But now I'm realizing that it doesn't matter what people think or what people say. It's going to be there, what they think, but it's ultimately the only thing that matters is what you think what you think you're going to be happy doing. So seeking that advice really helps when you're feeling kind of unsure and uncertain of where to go. Sometimes you just need like another perspective. And kind of going off of that, like maintaining, it's very suitable for the title of this podcast, but that long-term perspective of it, like I constantly had to remind myself that one decision doesn't define my entire career, and it doesn't define my life, and it doesn't define who I am. I can make a choice and that can change later on. Um, I think it's important to recognize that uncertainty, like, it's uncomfortable. You're going to be sitting in it and you're going to be uncomfortable, but it ultimately leads to so much growth and new opportunities that you never would have expected to come, and can end up being like some of the best things you've ever experienced. So, yeah.
When we grow up, there's all these different ideas of, oh, I could be a painter, right? Or I could be an astronaut. And then you realize, oh, you need to be in Harvard and you need to be in the top 1% to do that. I want to be a firefighter, but then you realize, oh, I don't like that shift work. I like the balance and the sleep, and I want my circadian rhythm to be intact. Or maybe you wanted to be a teacher, but then I don't have the patience. There's all these things pulling and tugging at us, and it seems so discombobulating. And when we go to our friends and family, they seem to know us better than ourselves, it seems. And so they offer up advice onto what we're good at. Oh, you're really good at listening to people. Or, wow, you're really patient with kids. Maybe you should go into teaching. Or you're really artistic. Maybe get into graphic design. Or you're really into sales. Or there's all these different ideas. But ultimately, I like what you said with you yourself have the answer. Like, sure, you can ask the different mentors and they have their own fields and their weaks and strengths, and they see it in you. But ultimately, you have spent the most time contemplating and seeing what gives you energy and what doesn't. And there's so much information out there that it's just so stressful, especially today with every day that progresses. There's seems to be more opportunity in this section, and then it's like, oh, I find that cool, but then it's, oh, but I'm so far into this degree, and then you're constantly getting pulled and tugged, but ultimately it's just finding what you can stick with for decades on end, right? Because you can get really passionate about one endeavor, right? You ever had that where you get really passionate with the design of some sort, maybe a video game or a hobby, and you go, whoa, maybe I could do this for the rest of my life. But then a year goes by and you're like, I'm not really interested in it. But same goes for, I think that's why a lot of people that I've on campus that I've heard, it's very common to switch degrees after 3 years. Hey.
Yep.
And it's like, in a way, it's disheartening to hear about it, but in a way it's just life.
Yeah.
That's just how it is.
Yeah, for sure.
So you realized that it's more about you, right? Now, was this always the case?
No, definitely not. I think the first few years after high school, it was very much about other people and what other people saw for me. I took a gap year after high school and I ended up working at an insurance company, scanning documents. very boring, very mundane, very, I was 19 years old in an office full of 30-year-olds. Like, it was not fun. And honestly, I wanted to quit so bad, but I stuck there for a year just because, my parents were telling me, you need to be here, you need to be making money, you need to be productive. And I don't necessarily regret it, but I remember back then how my mindset was and how almost obsessed I was with impressing the people around me, and like filling their cups, but not my own. And I like what you said about, ultimately finding that one passion that's gonna do it for you for the rest of your life. Even though I have my doubts occasionally about teaching, I go to work every day and I see my kids, and even on the hardest days, I come back feeling like I've made a difference, that I've helped someone. And that feeling, though it may be very small, is what I have to hold on to, because that's what's going to keep me going. That's what's going to get me through this degree and eventually through my career as well. It's, I've had those moments where I think, do I want to switch? Do I want to drop the last 4 years I've spent on this one degree? Maybe I would find something that I'd love just as much, but I really struggle thinking of something. I can't picture myself doing anything else, at least not in this moment, but that's why I need that sliver of positivity, that one thing that's going to get me through it. But yeah.
So in the tough days where the uncertainty is at all-time highs, you reinforce your action and your decision to pursue education by attaching meaning to these kids.
Pretty much, yeah. For so long, I didn't have anything to really remind myself of why I went into this profession in the first place. I know when I made the decision what that was. It's that I want to help people. I want to help kids. I want to help them learn and grow. But especially in those kind of first couple years of school, when you're doing all those general classes and you're a student, that's all you are. It's so hard to hang on to that. But then as you move through it, you gain more experience. You see with the people around you the difference you make. And that is what, I'm a very people-based person. So seeing like these kids that I've built relationships with and the difference that I can make, the possibility for that. Yeah, I hold on to that so tightly because I know it's there. And that reminds me, like, it brings me back to that first day when I decided, yeah, I want to go into education. It reminds me of that decision and why I even made it in the first place.
We get so jaded sometimes, hey, when things get rough and the stress is at all-time highs and just one wrong thing after the next, and maybe we didn't get enough sleep. We forget why we even started in the first place. Like for this podcast, for instance, sometimes I just get a bit, oh, why am I doing this? I'm not really getting anything out of it. It's like it's so much work. And I forget why I started. It's like, oh, it's to connect with people, to get their stories out, to just humanize a lot of the issues and to have all these different passions and to reinforce that life is just complex and there's more to it and I can learn. But then when you're stressed, you can't think properly, right? Like you forget about all that. Like why am I in school? Like I don't really want to study for that final. And I think sacrifices is a big thing for me. I think when it comes to being there for people and be like even showing up to class, I think one thing that really motivates me from not for not skipping and just not studying is I see my friends there and I see that they're also highly ambitious and they also want to make an impact no matter how small it may seem. Maybe they just want to be there and as a teacher. It's not even, and that's also subjective too, right? Because a lot of people may seem, oh, I'm not some multi-billionaire, I'm not like elite, I'm not like an A celebrity person, and I don't have all this money. I can't make a change. Like, yes, you can. Like you can, sure, you're in education, but then you can have these kids grow up and you can be that person that they look back to and go, wow, like Miss France was the person that actually listened to me for once. And you hear stories about that all the time.
Oh yeah.
It's phenomenal how much change and how much impact you can make onto someone. And that's just attaching meaning, right? And constantly reminding ourselves that, oh, there's light at the end of the tunnel and you have purpose and meaning. And I've seen some people working at McDonald's or stacking boxes just make it seem so purposeful. And when they attach this whole narrative to it, it's so beautiful. And you can do that for anything, right?
Yeah.
You can do that for washing dishes.
Yeah.
Like for some people, that's really motivating. But for some people, it's not. But for me personally, like when I think of, like I just watched this movie with Brad Pitt, and it's called Babel.
Okay.
Essentially, the premise of the movie is like all the actions that you take and all the decisions, no matter how little they are, they're affecting someone else on the other side of the world. And it's like shows like a person from Japan, a person from the Middle East, from the US, and they all coalesce and they all connect just by these little decisions they've made. It's so beautiful. But when you think of life as, okay, I can show up at work, I can show up for this friend, and you attach meaning to it, it's so liberating. It's so like, oh, I'm a part of this system. I'm not alone. Right?
Yeah.
And it's all jobs are like that. It's just matter of kind of mental games that you got to play with yourself. And it's never going to be 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
Can you share a time when uncertainty led to a surprising or positive outcome?
Yeah. Definitely. So after I started my education degree, which I think was fall of 2021, so we were still kind of in COVID times. I had just moved to Calgary. I was living in res. I had one in-person class. The rest I was all doing online from my dorm room. Which those things are not big. They are small. It's very confining. I just remember I was so not necessarily unsure of the path I'd chosen. I think I was, at the time, I was still very set on like, yeah, I want to be a teacher. But being in school was a lot for me at that time. Especially, not getting the full kind of campus experience.
And this is at UFC?
Yeah. So I was living in res and I was going, to my one dance class and to the dining hall. That's like all I did. Those were the 3 locations on campus that I was ever in. And I think school at the time was just so much that I was like, I really am not sure if I'm ready for this just yet. And I remember feeling so uncertain because I felt that pressure to start my degree and just get it done. I'd already taken, this was 2 years after we graduated. I felt like I was behind. But at the same time, I was so kind of just lost. And so I ended up deciding to take a leave of absence from school, which meant I could leave for a year and my program, like my spot was still being held because I was still pretty sure I wanted to come back. But it was then, okay, what am I going to do with the next year of my life if I'm not going to be in school? And because of COVID at the time, a lot of ski hills were short on staff. They didn't have all their international employees and people from Australia and stuff. So I just started applying to a bunch of different ski hills. I remember my dad giving me that idea. He was like, they're looking for people. You should apply.
Sure.
And so I did. And then I ended up getting a job at Nakiska, which is the ski hill in Kananaskis.
Oh, cool.
And so I moved to Kananaskis in January and stayed there until end of August. So I spent 8 months living there and working there. And that experience was heavily driven by the uncertainty I was feeling. And I remember when I first moved there, I immediately regretted it. I remember the first day I moved, my parents dropped me off and I was like, what the fuck did I do? Like, I need to get out of here and drive me back home right now.
Get me out.
I made a huge mistake.
Reverse.
Because it was just so out of character for me. It wasn't like I've never done anything like that before. And that first month living there, again, I was very holed up in my room and not really talking to people. Like, I was just so scared of living because it was new to me. But, a month goes by and eventually I was like, okay, I can't keep living like this. So, the more I started opening myself up, I just, started living life. And that experience ended up being one of the best things I've ever done. And, I made lifelong friends, one of whom I just saw couple weeks ago. It had been 2 years since we'd seen each other because she is from Ottawa or Ontario, same thing. And yeah, we're still friends today. I still talk to her. I just saw her. It was like no time had passed. It was amazing. And that experience, though it was driven by, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing, it ended up being one of the best things I've ever done. And I just learned so much about myself while I was out there. And it wasn't like, my plan got thrown off the rails. Like, I still went back to school in September because I took that break, I was so much more refreshed and ready to go when I went back that it was like, so what? I took 8 months off school. I lived an experience that I will never get back, and it changed me for the better. And, I went back into school feeling way more certain about what I was doing.
I heard from this guy named Scott Galloway that one of his biggest regrets was when a friend of his asked him to go backpacking all across, I think, Europe or Asia, somewhere, and like for a year. And his response was, why would I do that? I've got school, I've got bills to pay, I need to work. And looking back now, he regrets not being just stressing over the fact that, oh, he needs to do this, he needs to do that, but he never just took that leap, right? That you have those thoughts, right? Where, oh, what if I just took a year off? I'm so stressed. I just took a job at the ski trip, and eventually you do it, and it's like the best thing ever. It's that fear is in you, and that uncertainty. It's just culminating. It's ruminating. But then when you do take that leap of faith, you find that it's actually not that bad. And then you're
Mhm.
halfway through, and you wonder, like, why did I just suffer so much? Like, why did I didn't need to. And
Mhm.
there's this idea of like just nature, how trees grow in like different ways. And it's just when we're in nature, we just feel so free. Hey, it's just nothing is ever perfect in nature because everything is so imperfect. It's and when it comes to people and when it comes to just wanting to be this perfect image, it's unattainable. It's futile. I always bang on that drum all the time where it's like perfection is pointless because you just can't achieve it. And when you go, oh yeah, I need to finish school at 4 years, I need to do this really quick, so then I could get a job, then I could get a car, house, get married, whatever, have kids, or whatever you want to do with your life. You want to. It's like you don't take the second to ask, is this really what I want? And it's all so uncertain in there. But it's at which point is an oak tree's growth imperfect? Like when you get someone's trajectory in life, like because they took a year off from school or they didn't even go to school, like would you consider that a failure? Like, is that, it depends. Now,
Mhm.
were there societal expectations? Like are was there maybe disappointment in yourself? Do you feel like a failure? But it's like the messages that you attach to that's what makes it so ugly or perfect or beautiful, right? And it's just, there are things in life where yes, this is unfortunate that this happened, but a lot of the things that we place on ourselves are self-imposed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. How do you balance following a structured plan with being open to unexpected opportunities?
I think I think building flexibility into the plan is kind of maybe not where I started, but what I think when you ask me that question now. Um, you know, like I said, when I graduated, taking that year off felt like I was doing something wrong because it's just so kind of ingrained in society that you graduate high school, you go to university, you get your degree in 4 years, and then you start your career. And because I didn't do that, it felt like I was doing it wrong. And, you know, over time, yes, I built a structured plan for myself. That plan is I'm going to get my education degree and I'm going to become a teacher. How I do that is open. There are so many possibilities. I ended up taking 8 months off and living in the mountains. That was not expected. I ended up moving to Calgary to do it. That was also not expected. But I think when you go into that plan with that mindset of, okay, I'm going to build flexibility into this. It doesn't have to be one way or the highway. Um when you kind of just go into it expecting the unexpected, it opens up so many doors. I never thought I would end up in Calgary, or I never thought that it would end up taking me this long to get my degree. Like
Yeah.
it's been more than 4 years.
Mhm.
And sometimes even now, yes, I do struggle with that notion still of like, oh man, like I'm 23, I'm almost 24, and I'm still not done school yet. Like, come on, what are you
Yeah,
doing?
what is this? Yeah.
But like, no, it doesn't matter. Eventually, I'm gonna get that degree, and that's great. But right now, I'm just moving through it the way I want to, and you know what? I think there's, as much as I struggle with it sometimes, there's nothing wrong with taking your sweet time.
True.
But if you build that flexibility into your plan, then it's already there.
Yeah. Nobody's gonna ask you, yeah, how long did it take you for your degree? Like that's just rude. You know? Like,
Exactly.
yeah, if you got someone asking that, it's like, why? And then it's going about that. If it's reaching the destination with maximum safety. Because if maybe you reach the destination, but you just killed 4 people and you almost died. It's like, sure, you got there, but at what cost?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Like you need to prioritize your mental health. You need to prioritize your physical health, your relationships with people. Like for me personally, I'm not the best at school, and I started school like really late, like 3 years it took off. Now I'm in at the U of A now for psychology, and yeah, I'm gonna take more than 4 years. It's just I'm making excuses, but it sounds like I'm making excuses, but this is just what's best for me, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I want to read to you actually George Mack on how like there's so many people that will tell you, oh, this is to become a teacher, you need to do exactly 4 years. You needed to have this amount of preparation and this attitude and this personality, or when it comes to cooking something, when it comes to diet, when it comes to working out. But there's so many ways of getting to an answer, right? But you just need to do that works for you. And one newsletter, it's by George Mack, that I found it's so insightful. It's in tennis. There was a special moment in history. The 3 greatest of all time competed at the exact same time: Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. Behind their success is such a beautiful idea I can't stop thinking about. Matthew Side tells a wonderful story of watching them warm up before Wimbledon at Arongi Park. I think I butchered that. When Nadal warmed up, it was pure aggression. His biceps were bulging. He sprinted up and down like a man possessed. His shirt was dripping in sweat. When Djokovic warmed up, it was pure emotionless calibration. It was measured and scientific with every shot. When Federer warmed up, you could hear him giggling before he arrived. He's doing trick shots, caressing the ball, and exploring his own creativity. So the beautiful lesson from this is the 3 greatest of all times in tennis existed at this exact same time and had 3 unique approaches personalized to them. There was no right way of doing things that they all repeated. In the age of infinite information and the internet, it's so easy to download a new guru's advice without asking, will this work for me? Instead, personalize. Always personalize. When someone gives you advice, sandbox it and ask, are they giving me the Nadal approach, the Djokovic approach, or the Federer approach? Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, has a great filter he puts all advice through. What does this mean to me? It's better to have an okay playbook that leans into your strengths than a great playbook that leans into your weaknesses. Self-awareness is a hell of a drug. But I just thought that you got these like 3 insane tennis players, and they've got their special techniques with preparation. How did they all get there?
Mm-hmm.
And it's all so different.
Yeah.
And like that's in all of life, right? When it comes to getting a healthy family, when it comes to getting a healthy life, a healthy mind, a meaningful life, what does it mean to me? And how am I going to get there?
Mm-hmm.
And being rooted in realism as well.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love that.
Yeah.
And it's something that even going into teaching, like you have to really remember that there's no one way to do something. There's no right way all the time. Because, even as a teacher and how you teach your kids, everyone's going to learn differently.
Yeah.
Say you're doing math. Yes, there's a right answer, but what matters more is how the kid got there and, the way they think about it. You're going to have kids who are going to do things differently. That doesn't mean they're wrong. And I feel like, at least in the past, especially with a subject like math, that's something that was kind of almost drilled into us. Like, if you're
Mhm.
not doing it this one way, then you are wrong. But that's not necessarily true. And, telling a kid that they're doing it wrong is so degrading and disheartening to the kid. Like, who cares if they're doing it wrong? If they're getting to the answer, it doesn't matter how they got there. They are finding new ways to get to the same place. So I love what you just read. That was
Yeah, it was a great newsletter. Of just read it and I'm like, wow, this one was great. I always save all the big themes or the little pieces of quotes or stories that I see, and this really reinforces my idea for this, and I just pull it up when a conversation like that pops up. Let us talk about friendship.
yes.
The quality over quantity in friendships. How has your understanding of what makes a good friendship evolve over time?
It's really evolved over the years. I feel like quality over quantity is a saying that everyone knows. And I think, looking back when I was a kid, it was very much quantity over quality. Um, I back then felt like the more friends I had, the cooler it made me. It felt like popularity was the end goal. And I mean, even though I was a kid, like while I was in it, I knew that wasn't really healthy. I knew that wasn't what I wanted, but it seemed like it's what I should want. So that's kind of how it started. But then over the years, and now as an adult, I know more than ever that it's about the quality of your friends over how many you have. I think one of the biggest things that I've come to value in my friendships is reciprocity. I think I'm saying that right.
Yeah, reciprocity.
I always think, oh, am I butchering that word?
No, you got it right.
Yeah, I've had so many friendships over the years that have kind of been friendships of convenience. And in the moment, it's great to have those, whether they're friendships like that or not. If they're convenient, great. You have someone there for you, but whatever that thing is that's holding you together, it's not always going to be there, which means, the friendship might not always be there. And I think that's, at least for me, was something really hard to kind of grasp and let go of. Like, those friendships, while they may be convenient in the moment, they're not necessarily fulfilling you the way you need to be. And, those people might not be the friends that you're meant to have forever. Some friends are, some friends aren't. It's always going to be hard to let go of friendships, even if they do end badly. Those people were people who were important to you at one time in your life. It's never easy to let that go. But that's kind of helped develop my understanding of, I need that reciprocity in friendships, because if you're not giving back what I'm giving to you, then what's the point? Like it's very draining to give 100% in a relationship, any relationship, that you're not getting that back in. And it's just, in the end, so pointless putting yourself through that for something that's not filling you up in any way. So I think that's kind of the biggest thing I've come to appreciate over time in my friendships.
There's always going to be sacrifices that are made. And just because a friend has been there since you were a little kid doesn't mean it is of quality. And yeah, you're right. It's been said many times that quality is better than quantity, because it doesn't matter how many friends you have. If you don't feel fulfilled, if you don't feel rejuvenated after hanging out with them, then what's the point? Are you just doing it for attention? Are you just doing it to look cool? Okay, sure, you look cool. You have a lot of friends, but then you go home, you sit with yourself. Like, do you have the people there who are behind you, who won't just leave you when things go rough? The way I have designed kind of my foundation when it comes to friendships is two things. Are they there for me in times of despair? Like, do they despair in times of failure? And do they celebrate in times of achievement? Because a lot of people, they hear an achievement and they go, "Oh, but look at my achievement. Look how much better I'm doing." Or they hear a failure and they go, "Yeah, but look how bad my life is." Like, it's always about them, but it's always that back and forth, that reciprocity. It's like playing a sport of back and forth, back and forth. And it's like, there is healthy competition, but then there's also kind of just jealousy and envy, and you're not happy for a person, right? And it's just, you become friends with someone long enough, you get to see the texture of their imagination, you get to see the true colors, and it does come out. Ultimately, it does. And you have it in yourself to make the decision of, okay, I can't spend time with this person because they drain me. Or like, if it doesn't even have to be deep. Like, maybe you guys just don't have anything in common, or you do, but then you don't anymore, and it's there, and it's just, life is too busy and friends come and go.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
so, what qualities do you value most in close relationships, and why?
Mm-hmm. I love this question because it's something I've thought a lot about, especially after I made my move to Calgary, because I was leaving all my friends behind. And it was then for me about, okay, I have to make new friends here. Otherwise, I'm going to be insanely lonely. But, knowing the friends I've had, how can I learn from that and make friends that are actually going to help me in this crazy transitional period of my life? And even that has not remained consistent. Like, the friends I had first year of university, I don't think I talk to any of them anymore. Maybe one. Like, it was nice to have them for sure when I was moving and I was, in a place where I really needed people by my side. But I realize now that, the qualities I've come to really appreciate in my friends are trust, communication, and like growth and like support. Like a friend who, kind of what you were saying about like that reciprocity and not having a friend who's like always turning it back on themselves, but someone who celebrates your achievements with you, who helps you grow and makes you a better person, who supports you no matter what. I look back at a lot of my friendships and realize that they were never going to last because those are qualities that I value so heavily and I never had them. Um, if I can't trust you, it's not going to work. My friends need to be people who I can trust. And I mean, it's going to be different for everyone, the qualities that people value. But yeah, I really value trust in my relationships. I really value good communication. If you're not communicating, even when things are hard, like in my friends, I need people who I can tell them when I'm feeling uncomfortable with something that they're doing or something that they say. Because if you're going to sit in the friendship and just let it live that way, if you're feeling uncomfortable in a friendship and you're unable to communicate that, you're going to be living with it and it's going to be nagging at you. And like, why would you sit in a friendship like that when you can go out and there are, there's going to be people who are going to want to communicate with you and who will do it with you. Again, it goes back to that idea of reciprocity. What you give, you should also be getting back. And I mean, there are so many. I could go on and on, but
It is suffocating to have to put up a front with certain people when you can't be who you are because you're scared to be judged or you just don't trust them. And there's no place for those people in your life, especially in friendships, because you actually have a choice in that matter, right? With family, it's
yeah,
a little bit of a trickier situation. Well, friendship, you have a choice, and there are people out there who match your energy, and with trust, it is immensely difficult to build, and it's so easy to destroy. Like, a person can have decades of good times with a friend and they can build all this trust, but it only takes the one thing, right, for mistrust to happen. And without communication, that mistrust can't be turned into something constructive, something where you guys could come into a consensus, a solution. And also, without communication, trust couldn't have been established in the first place. Because if you're friends with someone for that long, I mean, you guys would have like gone through a rough patch. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a parent's brother, friend. You guys know each other long enough. You will come across a time where you both disagree on a certain thing and it erupts into something where maybe it's a yelling match, maybe it's just like a deep disagreement and you can't sleep at night and you're questioning, now I got to take down all those pictures on Instagram. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now it's, now who am I going to send memes to? Right?
Yeah.
But then, yeah, it's just finding the tools and it's the same way with uncertainty, right? And it's finding the people that work for you, finding the people that uplift you, that bring you life, and that make you feel heard, that make you feel like yourself. And maybe that person that you've been friends with for decades on end isn't it. And you can still love them from afar. You like maybe it doesn't even have to be that you guys had a falling out. Maybe it's just they moved somewhere else and maybe you guys just talk to each other once a year. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just this is a new chapter.
Yeah.
And people can return, people come and go. That's everyone.
Yeah.
And that's just accepting that fact in life and not ruminating on it.
Yeah, for sure. It like friendships, yes, some of them you'll have a falling out. Some of them, you know, are toxic. Something can happen sometimes to initiate that, but yeah, sometimes it's just, distance
It's
or
life.
like it's just life. It happens, and I know that now more than ever that like me moving away from home made it like it's hard. It's hard to maintain those relationships when you don't have that proximity anymore, and you're not like the frequency that you're seeing someone. It makes such a huge difference. But I think that's like the test of a true friendship right there, is if you can last even with all of that, like your friendship is strong. You don't have to be close to each other to be a good friend. It's all in the little things. It's in the communication, sending a text every once in a while, even though you don't live in the same city anymore. And like, I mean, I'll admit it's hard, especially when we lead such busy lives. But those little things can really keep a friendship going. I mean, that's how I still have a friend from Ontario who I have not seen in 2 years, and still we're like best friends. It's, all the little things can make such a huge difference.
I want to read you another one about friends. It's actually quite you'll really like this one. It's called Everything Degrades Over Time If It's Not Attended to. If you don't grow together, you grow apart. Friendships, relationships with your siblings and parents, life partners. And all of these require nurturing on a consistent basis. Otherwise, life pulls you apart. You change, they change. Eventually, you don't recognize each other. This is an ugly truth. Disney's romanticism of companionship is that once you've made a connection, it'll be there forever. Everything degrades over time if it's not attended to. The best friendships I've ever had are with people who I'm sharing a struggle with or helping grow. But at the very least, relationships require attention and cultivation to keep alive. Everyone is busy, and if you're not regularly involving yourself with someone's life, the hole that you take up will be filled with something or someone else. If you don't grow, you grow apart is a great description because it's hard to reach inertia with friendships. They tend to either be strengthening or weakening. Rarely are they static. One of the best solutions I've found for this is to cultivate a habit of texting people immediately whenever I'm thinking about them. Friends, parents, podcast guests, whoever. If a memory of us comes up, I'll message and say, I'm thinking about them. It's a tiny effort to keep hold of a relationship that you probably really care about and will miss it if it drops off. Untended gardens wither and die. Try to keep watering yours, by Christian Williamson. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true.
Yeah, like a text. That's why I've made it a habit to. I've actually followed this because I've heard that advice so many times. Where if a thought comes in about a friend, I just text them, "Hey, I at first I thought, oh, this is a bit gay, like why
Mm,
would they? It's not like me to just out of the blue, like just say something warm and,
right.
and loving, like
Yeah.
Advin. Then I started normalizing and like, yeah, bro, I thought of you. I was thinking about you today, that run we had, or that meal, or that test. I hope you're doing well. We should
Hmm.
hang out sometime soon, or give me a call or something like that. And it's helped me tend to relationships better.
Yeah, for sure. And I loved that piece in there again about like um I can't remember exactly what it said, but the growth and support. Um that's something that I've noticed in my cuz I feel like where I am right now, I'm in a steady place where I have like I don't have that many friends, but they're all such good friends that you know I reflect on this a lot, like what makes them such good friends. And I think in the past I've lacked friends who would help me grow and help me be the best version of myself. Like when I'm with these people, I like myself and who I am, and I
Mm.
do feel like I am the best version of myself. And that feeling is so special. And like for so long, I never had that. I never had those friends that, you know, pushed me to grow and be better and who supported me no matter what. Um, yeah, I loved all of that.
Yeah, when I think of my friends, I think of, it's not that they're, a lot of them are great people and a lot of them have accomplished phenomenal things, but I'm not friends with them because of that. Right?
Yeah.
It's cool. I've got friends that are incredibly intelligent and they're going to med school and they're lifting really heavy things at the gym and their cardio is insanely great. But that's great and all. But it's that when I'm talking to them, they make me feel special. They make me
Yeah.
feel like I'm actually worthy of someone to be talked to. It's like if I'm there and it's just I'm just admiring them for all that they've done, and sure I do that, then it's like a fan, right? I'm not a
Hmm.
fan,
Yeah.
right? This is both. Like we're both uplift each other.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Um, so for you, does does it come easy to make friends? Like when you see someone, are you the one to strike up a conversation and make plans? And
No, I'm definitely very introverted. Um, it takes me a while to make new friends.
yeah,
Um, I'm very much someone who has to really get to know you and um, just like spend time in an environment that, I mean, for me, that's mostly school or work. Those are the two places I make my friends. And, but like, it'll take me a while to reach that place of feeling comfortable. And then, like, maybe sometimes, yes, I will be the first person to reach out and say, hey, let's hang out outside of school or outside of work. Um, but I will say it's not easy for me because I always fear that like I have this little voice in my head that's like, what if they don't like you? You like them, you think they're cool, you want to hang out with them, but like, what if they don't like you?
well, it's that risk of rejection, and
Yeah,
it's like, oh, what if? It's like chances are it's probably not the case, but it's like your head plays tricks on you. And I've repeated this so much, but we suffer more in imagination than in reality.
Yeah.
It's like reality, it's not that bad. But then in our head, it's like this whole grand thing. And I'm going to ask, hey, what's your name? And then they're going to get up and they're going to act all offended, push me. And they're going to tell everyone how much of a bad person I was for asking their name. And I'm going to get kicked off and expelled. And it's like, it's probably not the case.
No.
Yeah. But definitely it's tough. It is tough out there.
Yeah. Well, and I think about some of the friendships I have now where, I was the first person to kind of initiate something. And then, I look at what I have now and I'm like, I don't regret that for a second. I think about it, I'm like, what if I hadn't have done that? What if I hadn't have taken that risk?
Yeah.
Then I wouldn't be where I am now,
Actually, one of my closest friends, we don't hang out as much anymore because he transferred from U of A to McEwen. Just didn't like U of A. But we still keep in contact with each other, birthday or Christmas, holidays, call each other. And our first interaction was my first year in my first week in language arts, and there was not enough booklets for this poem. And so he got partnered up with me, and I was really friendly, but actually in his head, like we're really honest with each other now. He didn't like me. He thought I was cocky or something. He thought I was like not genuine. But yeah, it's just that level of friendship now where we are to that point where we can say each other, like tell each other things that would normally offend a person you're not as good of friends with. But like looking back, and I'm so glad that he actually gave me a chance, and I talked to him, and now it's been 3 years in. It's dope. I love friends are great.
See, and I love friendships like that where you can just be so brutally honest with each other. It's like it's normal.
Yeah.
I have a friend like that who, a couple of my closest friends now, we worked together for months before something finally happened, and I finally reached out and said, hey, do you guys want to hang out? And again, I was very scared that like, what if they don't like me? But that is what started it all. And now, like, these are some of my best friends. And yeah, I can be brutally honest with them and tell them, yeah, I thought you hated me. I wasn't sure you liked me. And, we can be that honest with each other, and it's not a problem.
But it's great that you can just, you would have no nerve telling them about these things initially, right? But that like the progression and the level of friendship. And I always wonder, what if I just chose not to go, or what if I didn't text them on that day? It's like, then the seed wouldn't have been planted, and I just would have less of life and less of connection. And it's great I've heard that the greatest investment you can make is to those people that make you feel uplifted, that make you feel connected. And that becomes truer and truer with every day that goes on. Because it's finite too. Right? A lot of the moments we have with these people and in school and just being in our 20s, one day we're going to look back and we're going to go, wow, that was like incredible. That's just part of my life now, that it's instilled. And it's great that I was there for that person and they were there for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I've just come to value the people in my life so much now that I think about that all the time. I'm like, what if this hadn't happened? Like, it takes
Mhm.
the smallest thing and things could have been completely different. And I wonder where would I be now if that hadn't happened? Who would be my friends now? Like, every step you take has lasting, implications. Um, it smallest thing could change your life forever. You
Yeah.
won't even know it in the moment.
Let us talk about reading.
Yes. Yay.
So, what genres or authors have had the most impact on you as a reader?
Okay, so when you first sent me this question, I was kind of hesitant um as to how I would answer. Um but then I realized, you know what? No, I want to talk about this. Because my favorite genre to read is romance. And I feel like a lot of people, when they ask me this question, I only answer truthfully if I know that the person I'm talking to will agree with me or, you know, be like, yeah, I love reading romance too. Because it's great to talk about it with someone who also loves reading
Yeah,
romance.
yeah.
But I think the reason why I find it so hard to talk about is because there's this stigma around women who read romance novels. Um, I've heard the term fluff thrown around a lot, that romance is just fluff. But it's not. It's so much more than that. And I think one of the reasons why I love reading that genre so much is because, you know, it's most of these authors are female authors. Um, so they're writing female characters who are very relatable. Like 9 times out of 10, I'm finding at least one thing in each female main character that I can relate to. I'm like, oh yeah, check that box, check this box. like, um, it's nice to read about characters who you can relate to. Um, and I hate that there's that stigma around women reading this genre. Like, why is that a problem? Why is that considered girly or wrong because it's girly? Like, I don't get it. I think it's
Do you experience judgment from it?
um like
Like, I get that it is like a stereotype and it is typical, but I don't like I wouldn't have an idea because I'm not
yeah.
a woman, or I read romance here and there, but it's like, is it people judge you or they think it's typical, or what is it?
I don't think it's necessarily that people judge me for reading that. I think it's more my fear of being judged, as opposed to, oh, that's something I'm actually experiencing. Um, but I think I fear that judgment because I know that stereotype exists. And, I'm scared of falling into that and being judged for it, which is why I'm very careful when people ask me this question. Like, I know I shouldn't have to be, and I should just answer truthfully anytime someone asks me this. Or, I should answer truthfully and not be embarrassed about it. But I think because that stereotype exists, I'm always just like a little afraid that, when I answer that question, what's the response I'm going to get, kind of thing.
What are the typical responses that you get?
Um, I mean, it definitely depends on who I'm talking to, because if I'm talking to one of my girlfriends, like 90% of the time, they're agreeing with me, and we're like, we start talking about our favorite authors or our favorite books. But I think when it's not my friends asking me, it's not necessarily that I'm met with a bad response. But I think when people ask me more questions about it, I start to get more reserved as the conversation goes on. And I start, not answering 100%. Or it's like if my parents are asking me what I'm reading, I will say, oh yeah, I read romance, and then I'll stop there. Like I won't talk anymore about it. I think because I'm scared of
Yeah.
what they might think. Like it fully depends on who I'm talking to. Yeah.
Well, I don't think people would judge you. Maybe it's the fact that they aren't interested in it. Maybe the loss of enthusiasm. Maybe why you withdraw. But then when you find someone that does revel in romance books, like Where the Crawdads Sing, would you consider that a romance book, or it's more of like a thriller?
I'd consider it more of like a mystery thriller, but it does have, a really strong romance storyline in it.
Okay.
But like I love that book, and I will openly admit that I love that book, even
I
though
love that book too.
there's so much controversy around that book and that author I won't get into, but like I think like I do read so many different genres, but I think
Primarily.
I read romance, and a lot of the time what really keeps me engaged in a book
Mhm.
is kind of that romance thread of the storyline, because I love reading about two people falling in love. Like it's so fun to me. And, the book doesn't necessarily have to be a romance novel, but if there is some kind of romance thread in there, and if it's good enough to keep me invested, it will keep me going.
Do you think it's rooted in reality though? Because I've heard that romance books can morph your reality onto what a man should be and should do. Because like in movies and books and entertainment and plays, you got a perfect woman and a perfect man. And I've heard, I don't really know much about that, it can make you have too high of expectations. Does that?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Like I say this all the time. I'm
Yeah.
like, reading romance novels has fully ruined my expectations of what's real, because like, yeah, the reality is these authors are women. These male characters are coming from women's heads. So of course when you put it on paper, it's going to be perfect.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily true. If you have a romance that's that of, if it's romance novel worthy, good on you, because like it's not
Running in the rain before she takes off. And
exactly. It's
confessing.
not realistic at all, but that's part of the fun too, reading it.
Well, imagination.
Yeah.
Right. And I think as long as you're aware, right? If you're
Yeah.
completely delusional and you go, yeah, I want a man that is this, and when I do this one thing, they need to be always there for me. They need to be 6 feet, making 200K, and it needs to happen when it's raining, and we need to go on these dates. And yeah, that could certainly make you not choose anyone because you're so choosy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, 100%. It's something you have to be aware of for sure. That like if those are your expectations, good luck.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it's true. It's not real.
I can
So
see
you
that
have to
for men, the porn does that for men, right? They expect a woman to just be perfect, or even like models and all that, and that kind of morphs your reality. And so they expect this woman to be just super perfect, but nobody ever asks themselves, what do I have to offer?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, for sure.
yeah. But definitely a lot of self-reflecting and being rooted in reality is a big
Yeah.
component. uh, how has reading influenced your approach to education and teaching?
Another really good question. Um I mean, going back to the genres that I love reading, like yes, romance. Um I also really love reading fantasy novels. Um, and I think one of the reasons why I love reading that genre is because it gets me to use my imagination, which as an adult is something we don't do very much anymore, I feel like. Um, and it kind of gets me thinking along the lines of, yeah, imagination and creativity, um, which like I'm a huge advocate for the arts, especially in schools. And so incorporating genres like fantasy that are going to get my future students to utilize that creativity and that imagination, like that is huge for me. Um, but I think more holistically, what reading has influenced my perception of teaching and stuff is just like human skills and emotions, like being able to empathize and understand different perspectives. It's a huge thing you practice when you're reading is perspective taking. Um and like anything, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And um being able to take the perspective of a student and what they might be feeling or what they might be thinking. Um, like that's huge. Being able to swap and put yourself in their shoes. And, if it's a student who's, for example, they don't speak English, there are a lot of students out there these days that, are coming to schools and they don't know a word of English. How are you going to then teach them what you're teaching everyone else? You know, you got to use that creativity in, okay, I need to find some other ways to do this. And I also need to take the perspective of the student because you have no idea how they must be feeling, not being able to understand a single word you're saying. I actually had a prof who did an exercise with us on this where she just started speaking in Greek for the whole class. And we were so confused. We were like, what is she doing?
The
Like,
whole
why?
class, 50 minutes.
Not the whole class. It was a good half the class though. And
Oh, wow.
we were so confused. We were like, why is she speaking? Like we knew she could speak Greek, so we knew that was the language she was speaking. But we were like, why is she speaking in Greek? Like we were all so confused. And then, and I knew she was trying to like teach us something. But what she was trying to teach us, I couldn't quite put my finger on until she switched back to English. And she said, this is how those students feel when they can't understand you, they're sitting there the entire time, not getting anything you're actually teaching, but they're just sitting there thinking, what is she saying? And that was a really good exercise for like perspective taking in terms of, okay, how are my students feeling teaching?
Yeah, just absolute gibberish. Eh?
Yeah.
It's just so discomforting to the ears to have other people speak to each other and you don't understand a single word. And yeah, you had said that it increases your empathy, and I think that is proven in like many scientific studies where people who just read more fictional books are a lot more empathetic and they understand the way other people work better because they're so used to putting themselves into a protagonist's point of view. And because within movies, within a lot of the activities, you don't really get that full on examination than words on a text. Maybe they'll find another invention that would trump reading, but I think it's the best way to have access into a person's point of view. Not only this reflects the author's kind of mindset, because a lot of their the message and the things that they align with go a lot with the character. Not all the time, because then there are like horror books and like a weird, really like Stephen King books, and just because you're talking about a murder doesn't mean you are a murderer. You know, it's just, but a lot of it is rooted in kind of the author's message and what they think about and the idea they have for the main character is made up of all these different things about their past and about their present and current relationships and what they will aspire to be. And I think this is partly why so many people say that books are way better than movies, because you get a full understanding of the characters and kind of the little things. Like in the book, you can clearly tell from that point of view that they're disrespected just because of their internal dialogue, or just it's said in the book. But then in a movie or even in real life, you can miss those things, right? And a lot of these things that do happen within the book, you start to see it happen in person, which is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, like, I think that's why I prefer books to movies almost like 9 times out of 10. Because, yeah, you're just getting so much more, such a bigger picture. And I mean, kind of like what I said earlier is one of the reasons why I love reading is being able to read about characters that I can relate to. And, you know, with a movie or a TV show, you're only seeing what's in front of you. You're not seeing everything inside those characters' heads, which makes it harder to relate to them because you're just seeing what's happening. Whereas in the book, with all that internal dialogue, you know, I mean, it's in real life, it's the internal dialogue that other people aren't hearing. Those are the things that, you know, you're maybe the most insecure about and looking for someone to relate to on. But, you know, no one talks about it because for everyone, it's the internal dialogue. But you can find that a lot more easily in books.
Yeah. Reading's been losing popularity, I find, and rapidly with all the kind of
dopamine hits of just scrolling and just short, like nobody can stomach reading a book these days. And I think they should make it, I don't want to force people into it, but I think people would derive great joy into just sitting down and just reading. For a book takes a long time. Hey, and like you need to have a lot of patience.
For sure. And I mean, all readers are different. Some people can read like one book over the span of like weeks or months. I am not like that. I have to read it in like at most a week, but like if it were up to me, I would read it in a day
Really?
because I get so invested, and then like I can't prolong the story over time. Like it makes much more sense to me if I'm just like reading it all at once. Which I know like people think I'm crazy for that because I don't do it much anymore because I'm so busy, but I can do it. I've read books in a day because for me, when I sit down and read, I'm a very anxious person to begin with. So my brain is constantly on overdrive,
Mm-hmm.
and reading is kind of one of the only things that will like turn everything off for me. Because
Flow.
when I sit down and I read a book, that's the only thing that matters in that moment. I'm not thinking about that exam or that paper that I'm super stressed about. I'm not thinking about, that bad day at work I had. I'm just reading, and I'm invested in the world and the characters that the author has built. And it's like it's truly one of the only times where my brain just like completely shuts off.
That's beautiful. That's great. I see, for me, I just I put it a part of my discipline routine, and rarely do I find a book that, oh, this just captures my attention where I can just invest hours on end every single day. Like I want to learn, and I don't know, it's weird because when it comes to fiction books too, there are times where I'm captured, but then there's just times where, oh, I just got to get through this book. I heard it's really good, and there's a lot of things that I can learn from it. Like that's usually for nonfiction books, which I read more of. But then it goes with, there are books for every single person out there, right? If you're a person that just doesn't that detests reading, there's a book out there for you. Like if
Mm-hmm.
it's not action books, it's romance books. If it's not romance books, it's pet books, or like books that this exist in a different realm, like quantum physics or science fiction books. But yeah, I think in general though, it is just great for your mind. It's just it teaches you how to be patient, and it increases your vocabulary. It helps you learn, empathize more, and attach more. You can understand yourself better by the way these characters are understanding themselves, and you can find solutions by attaching how the main character thinks. You can adopt that same mindset, and it just might work out. I know it's worked out for me to adopt a certain fictional character,
Oh yeah.
because this is, maybe that character is not human, but there is a lot of fragments that make them relatable, that you can access and you can take away from,
Yeah.
which is remarkable.
Yeah. 100%. I think that like anyone who says they hate reading, I'm like, I think you just haven't found the book for you yet. Because
Yeah.
I agree. I think there's a book out there for everyone. And if it's not a book, like maybe it's the act of sitting down and reading words on a page. I still consider audiobooks, you know, yes, you're not sitting down and physically reading, but you're still gaining almost as much, I think, as if you were. You're still gonna grow your vocabulary and invest yourself in a story and learn those, that empathy and perspective taking. So yeah, I try to encourage people. I'm like, if you haven't, you might just not have found the right book yet.
True. Yeah. Do you have a favorite book or story that you recommend to everyone, and why?
See, that's so hard because whenever someone asks me this question, even like when I talk about myself, I feel like every thought I've ever had just like leaves my brain, and I forget all the books I've ever read when I'm put on the spot. But
Because your brain goes into overdrive because you've read so many books.
oh yeah, it's like, okay, this one, like,
Yeah.
I mean, we've already talked about Where the Crawdads Sing. That is definitely up there for me. It's one of my favorites. I've read it probably like 5 times now.
Oh, wow.
And I've seen the movie multiple times, and it's one of my one of my favorite book to movie adaptations.
Oh, wow.
I thought the movie was really well done. I don't know. And I had never pegged myself to be someone who like loved like kind of a mystery whodunit kind of thing. But that book has so many facets to it that I almost feel like it has something for everyone. But one of my favorite books of all time is The Hunger Games. I didn't always love reading. When I was a kid and a teenager, I actually hated it.
Really?
It felt like school and work to me, because I would go to school, would come home, I would go to dance, and then like reading just felt like more work. So I never used to read when I was young. I hated it. But it wasn't until I graduated high school that I finally started reading again and almost like fell in love with it. And where I kind of started was those like really popular books that like everyone's read.
Harry Potter.
Like Harry Potter.
Percy Jackson.
Yes, Percy Jackson.
Divergent. Yeah.
The Hunger Games. Like all those books that everyone knows and everyone talks about. That's kind of where I started. So I didn't read them at an age where most people read them. I read them a lot later in life. But
hey, I was talking to my teacher, and a lot of people's favorite books were books like the Harry Potter and Hunger Games, and the teacher dissed the entire class and said those are like middle school level reading books.
So what?
Yeah, so what?
Like,
I saw my bus driver like transit, and she was reading Harry Potter just casually, just, oh, what are you reading? Like, oh, Harry Potter. I'm like, cool. She's like a woman in her 40s.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
I know it's those are deemed as books written for kids of that age, but I guarantee, like, I think a lot less kids these days are reading those books because a lot less kids are reading. But yeah, who cares who it was written for?
True.
If it's a good story. And in particular, the Hunger Games series is what kind of hooked me and got me back into reading again.
I mean, it is kind of a romance. I mean, after the first book, it's less so. But yeah, the first book was definitely a romance book.
Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, I already said this, but like, it doesn't have to be labeled as a romance book for me to like it. if there's a little thread of romance in there, I'm like 90% of the time I'm hooked.
Does it? Were you siding with PETA or Gail? Gail?
PETA, 100% team PETA.
But Katniss never really liked PETA. Eh?
At first,
She kind of did, but then she was like on and off about PETA. Like she was pretending at first, but eventually it blossomed to something real. But then, was it Gil or Gail?
Gail,
right?
Yeah.
Gail was always in the back of her mind. Like he was always watching the TV.
Yep. No. I'm 100% team PETA. I love an underdog.
That's so funny. Yeah, it's that I volunteer as tribute thing. I remember when that was a big thing in middle school, and everybody was reading The Hunger Games, and everybody was like, "I volunteer as tribute."
Yeah. No, I remember that too, but I remember being so confused because I hadn't read it yet.
At that time, you weren't in your book phase.
Yeah, I was like, what?
Yeah. So, if you could be any fictional or non-fictional character, who would you be?
Oh my gosh. Such a good question. I mean, I think just because of how much I love the Hunger Games, I would say Katniss Everdeen, not because I want to participate in the games per se, but like I always thought of her as a very brave character and someone who it sounds cheesy, but you know, that character inspires me because it's a lot of characteristics that not necessarily I lack, but I'm like, I want more of that. I want more bravery and I want more courage. Like, I don't know. I love a good female heroine who's just like a badass the entire book.
She's a badass.
Yeah. Like, I will eat that up every single time and I'll be like, yeah, I want to be her.
Yeah. She's that concept still really interests me. Like I'm sure they could make 10 different parts. I've read all 3 books as well and I've watched the first movie. I haven't seen the second or the third one.
Oh, really?
But yeah, it just says so much about like reality. Like, oh, like it's the District 12 or 13? District 13.
Katniss is from District 12.
Right. Was there a District 13?
I think so. I'm kind of blanking right now, but that sounds
right.
I think they like discovered that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I can't
but I always
remember.
thought like reading all these books, I always made the connection onto real life, and I went, oh yeah, like District 1 is like all the rich people and everybody, and all the lower levels are like District in District 11, District 12, where they're all fighting for the scraps, and they've all been since they were born. The people in those districts were in a less fortunate environment, and so they grew up and they were just killed versus all these crazy assassins that were practicing to be in the games. And yeah, I just thought it was reading those books, even for like Percy Jackson, Harry Potter, it's like really engaging your imagination of what if I had powers? What if I was in that realm? I'd definitely be Gryffindor, or I'd be more of a Slytherin, or Percy Jackson. What kind of demigod would I be? Like, would I be cool to be Poseidon's son? But yeah, it's just, I love that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, me too. I love like Harry Potter houses. I'm a Hufflepuff. I'm a proud Hufflepuff, and I love talking about it.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, going back to what I briefly said about like how I love reading fantasy, is it really works my imagination and my creativity. And like, I love that as someone who really loves the arts. I've noticed that like in school as a student, a lot of professors will ask you to be creative in your assignments and projects or whatever. But it's so hard nowadays to be creative, especially when there's a grade attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I find if there's a grade involved, I feel myself holding back because we're afraid to be creative and let our imaginations go there.
If you deviate away too much from the rubric, you could risk getting a flat 0.
Yeah, exactly.
I put in so much effort into this, and it's just, yeah, it definitely caps that creativity, kind of the rubric. But then again, if that structure wasn't in place, then people would just give in their bare minimum or
yeah. No.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on the long-term podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, this was really fun. I appreciate your honesty and just taking some time for yourself to figure it out and just having it be a memorable experience, teaching at a ski hill.
I didn't teach. I actually just worked in the cafeteria, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's
I
all
don't
right.
ski.
You don't ski?
Like, I can ski. I haven't skied in years, though.
Okay. But still a memorable experience.
Yes.
Yeah. I was just picturing you just shredding powder.
In fact, I lived there for 4 months and I never once went skiing.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah. No, that's one way of putting it.
Yeah. That's good. It requires a lot of willpower. Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I think you'll make a phenomenal teacher one of these days. Yeah. And if not, then you'll find something else because life is really long.
Yeah.
Sure. People say life is short, but it's actually really long. We've lived so long.
Yeah.
I swear. But yeah, do you have any last words to anyone listening, watching?
I don't think so. I just super grateful for this experience. This was very nerve-wracking at first, but I'm really glad I decided to do it. So thank you.
Yeah, this could only happen if people believe in it as well. But yeah, as always, to everyone listening and watching, there is a place for you in this chaotic world. Never lose hope, strengthen your faith, and keep it long term. Taryn Frans, everyone. Peace.